Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today for what I know will be a really thoughtful and practical conversation inspired by the Accouter Global Wealth and Luxury Interiors Report. We're filming today from the Accouter Group's latest show apartment at 36 and 37 Hertford Street Residences at the remarkable Mayfair address delivered by the development manager CIT Group. It's been a privilege for me to contribute this year's introduction for the report, but more than that, it's been fascinating to see how many different voices there are across the industry that are really helping shape the true picture of what luxury is and how it's evolving right now. What comes through so clearly in this report, and I know that our panelists today will explore this in much more depth, is that today's ultra-high net worth clients aren't just acquiring homes, they're curating lives. The space that they're choosing to invest in are shaped by much deeper drivers, so well-being, legacy, privacy, a clear sense of purpose and authenticity. More than ever, interior design is no longer just a finishing touch, it's a true differentiator, and thoughtful design and quality craftsmanship, a sense of authenticity and sustainability and cultural relevance are all part of what sets these projects apart and making them exceptional in today's market. And of course, wellness has come to the forefront and the centre of what clients now expect from their homes and actively support in terms of a calmer, healthier way of living through biophilic design, spa-inspired spaces and integrated technologies. We're also seeing a shift towards client confidence, clients increasingly wanting spaces to feel timeless, deeply personal and true to their values, from ethical sourcing to carbon neutral practices and B Corp standards. There's an unmistakable move towards living well and doing good at the same time. And these ideas are all captured in Accouter's report, but today's discussion is where they really come to life through the experience and the expertise of our panelists who make this happen every day for the ultra high net worth clients that they deal with. So thank you to our panel. Thrilled to welcome our four guests. So we've got Dimitris Stavrakis, founder and director of The Tagli. We've got Rian Barker, Group Design Director for Accouter, Sai Shanmugam, Sales Director for Opus Financial Partners, and Chris Richmond, Partner and Head of Residential for CIT Group. I know everyone's going to give their fantastic perspectives today on how the shifts are showing in art, design, client relationships and the future of the global luxury markets. So Dimitris, I'd love to start with you. So you champion art not just as decor, but as sort of a true reflection of the cultural sort of capital identity. So in your view, how does integrating fine arts really elevate the perception of luxury in a home today for ultra high net worth individuals?
It's a really good question. I feel, in a contemporary world, in a world for, where people and clients demand the best, art becomes and moves above and beyond decor. It becomes a sign of an identity, it becomes a key narrative. So we actually see clients and residential spaces looking and acquiring works that actually have a strong narrative, something that echoes the heritage of a building, something that actually echoes the people that might actually be living in there and so on. So we are looking and working with artists and artworks that actually add to that narrative rather than just being used as another layer to decorate something, which is a problem, the decor element of it. So we're looking into, instead of actually designing something, curating an entire experience for people who appreciate luxury and also want to elevate the experience of visitors who might be coming into such properties.
Definitely, and that experience piece is so important nowadays. And Chris, building on that, you've worked on landmark developments that have had to balance sort of the cultural heritage, the design, and the place. So, for who is today's super prime buyer, and how are they sort of responding to the idea of legacy and curation, which Dimitris talked about?
Yeah, I mean, the market is more crowded and trickier for the past 18 months. We ourselves have developed, 3 or 4 heritage projects in and around London, some of, the finest buildings in London, grade 1 and grade 2 listed. I think buyers very much respond to that heritage, that listing, in that you cannot replicate this. Be it a piece of art, someone can't copy it. an apartment in a listed building that's been designed once and built by the king, or designed by a royal architect, can't be replicated. So buyers really respond to that scarcity value that there is only one, which is fantastic. I think going forward, how do our buyers, and who is that luxury buyer in an increasingly now crowded global landscape? We're not just looking at London, we're looking at other cities around the world attracting high net worths. The apartments and the legacy and the properties we build have to be 10 out of 10. So every single touch point within that, the creation of the journey from how a buyer buys, how they interact with our sales team, how the apartment is designed, their experience with an interior designer, the fit out, the quality, the ESG, everything now has to be a 10 out of 10. So that's what we as developers and designers have to achieve and have to strive for in order to attract that buyer.
Of course, and that is that quality over everything else, isn't it? So, and Sai, you work closely with families who are looking to diversify where they're going to live. So, and obviously, London is such an international city. So, how is the London market evolving right now, especially in light of any global uncertainty and also the new wealth flows that we've been tracking in this report?
Yeah. I've been talking to my therapist about that as well. The change, as Chris touched, last 18, I would say 2 years have been very, very tricky, and London is so international, and we are seeing the more of the South Asians coming in now. The Middle Easterns have always been here, and we are seeing definitely a shift in new money rather than old money, and there's a lot of tech made millionaires and billionaires. We are seeing more of that. And I was looking at a report the other day. The youngest billionaire, self-made billionaire, is 26, which sounds crazy, right? And what are they doing? I mean, for them, it's more about functionality, having the ease. They rather have a functional apartment rather than a mansion. So that's the difference. So they want a really nice piece of art, sustainable living, clean air filters and low carbon footprint and all that kind of stuff, which is becoming more and more mainstream, right? The government hasn't helped. The taxation is deterring people. It's definitely slowed down the market dramatically. I'm sure all of you would agree with that. The non-dom thing is it's unfortunately has a terrible effect on the market. A lot of our clients have exited, but then at the same time, we're seeing new clients coming in who are seeing opportunities, seeing the prices shift. We've done a transaction recently on Princess Gate, which, again, the client has been watching the market for 2 years and then decided to transact. So it's slowed down, deals still happening. So that's still a much more pulling factor for London, in my opinion.
No, I completely understand. And Rian, with sort of London sort of still being what we would say maybe that trophy asset, there are also lots of other cities which are very important. And you and your team at Accouter, you design homes in London, Dubai, New York. How do those design priorities differ across those markets? And how would you guide clients to make sure that they remain authentic to sort of the location's architecture, a little bit what Demetrius said, but also like the culture as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of our kind of ultra high net worth individuals are very international in their tastes and their sort of lifestyles. So a lot of our clients will have properties kind of in cities all over the world. And so we would obviously inject their kind of style into any of those properties wherever they are. But every city, every sort of location has its own character. So yeah, for example, in New York, our clients, we work a lot at the moment in the Waldorf Astoria residences. So we do the apartments, we've done some apartments there, where that has been sort of slightly smaller, kind of more functional living. Tech is really important, but also perhaps with a slightly more kind of European interior style. When we're working over here with clients in London, we might be working on slightly larger buildings, sort of grade 2 listed buildings where there might be sort of larger spaces, taller ceilings, and we would work with clients to create an environment where we're working with local craftsmanships, we're bringing those kind of things into the property to give it that sense of place. And then obviously over in Dubai, we could be working on a villa, much larger, kind of cooler environment. We're doing that inside-outside space. We're working with clients to make sure that we're kind of reacting to those cultural requirements. But always what we will do is make sure that we are designing to the architecture. So wherever the building is, the foundation of the design will be what that architecture kind of needs, and we'll respond to that with the interior architecture design.
Definitely. And Demetrius, coming to you, it was sort of the same point, but putting it back to art. You curate pieces for lots of diverse clients from all over the world, but what factors are they considering when, maybe not so much with the home itself, but their own personal brand and their identity? How are you sort of making that sort of correlation between the client and the piece of art?
Absolutely. There's always a challenge because there are quite a few forces in terms of what you want to show to your friends and family, what art actually tells about your property. And lastly, and I think the most important thing is how that resonates with you. What would you actually work? I think historically, if we actually see, we have a fascination for portraiture. Even, we actually buy faces, engage with faces and everything. But I think at times, historically, we actually see this as being mirrors. Why would you buy a particular portraiture of a certain era? Is it the clothing? Is it the status of the individual? Is it the emotional state that perhaps may echo? So what we're trying to do with private clients and clients that they do indeed invest in art is actually try and find and say, what is that emotional link that you want to convey, and what will actually ultimately make you happy? Connect with the work and actually bring that authentic experience above and beyond tastes and trends that they might be changing. And in that fast pace, as everyone actually said, we are an incredibly tricky environment, but in a really fast-paced environment. What's the authentic values that you want to connect with an art piece, and actually being able to live with it and echo who you are as an individual, but at the same time actually have a meaningful connection with it, which could be public, but can also be deeply personal in terms of how they want to communicate with their work. So it's a fascinating environment in terms of actually trying to get to know a client and offer something that will actually make them. It's a form of therapy to a degree, but instead of a technique in psychotherapy, you provide visual language, and at times that's actually soft and kinder to a person.
I absolutely love that, and sometimes we forget that these are people's homes, regardless of the time that they might not be there all the time. But
Yes.
that it is people's homes, and it needs to sort of speak to them from an authentic point of view. And Sai, you have said for modern luxury, it's not about just selling property. So you need to be that trusted advisor, you need to be that fixer, you need to be that connector. So for you, what do modern client relationships look like nowadays for those ultra high net worths?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's modern, but it's always been around. It's having a trusted advisor who can get everything sorted for you before you arrive, or before you or your family lands into the city. And now the trend, from what we are seeing, personally me, I have clients messaging me on WhatsApp, which has become more mainstream than emails, and voice notes at different time zones, and you just pick up on it, and they just want things to be sorted. In terms of having a fixer or a connector, is if a client is looking to buy, depending on if you're talking about ultra high net worth individuals, they don't want to see what is on the market, right? They want to know what's being built, what is available, and also the discretion that they don't want to be public. So that is quite important, to have a person on the ground who's going to take care of everything, connecting you with an art dealer, or connecting with an interior designer, that one point of contact that manages everything else for them, so that they don't have the stress. All they're saying is, yeah, I like that, let's go with that. So that's where I think modern luxury is evolved to, is having a family office who takes care of all the business side of it, but then you need someone who is going above and beyond in terms of finding the right people, knowing the client, understanding what makes them happy, and what they like, what their style is, and then kind of pre-interviewing who will be the right person, who will match the client's requirement. And I work with so many people, so many, a handful of interior designers, probably just one art dealer, but it's so important to have that knowledge and knowing your client, and then what your client will respond well to. So, and I've seen that time and time again, where incidents happen. I had a client recently, a Nigerian client, moved to London, and I was hesitating to introduce this architect, and I said, okay, we were stuck for time, we did it, but in the back of my head, I know they're completely different characters, and they didn't get along. And halfway through the project, my client was like, we need to get someone else, and we did that. And so I should have gone with my gut feeling right then and there. So that was a big learning step in knowing that, okay, if you need to, everyone is good, there's a lot of good talent in London, but connecting the personalities is very important, and for that you need an advisor or a fixer, really.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, like a matchmaker. That's exactly what it is. And sort of going back, you obviously talked about sort of building at that point in architects and development. But Chris, coming to you, your landmark projects sort of have, I'm sure, taught you about trust and sort of delivery. So looking back on the projects that you've done, sort of both in the UK, but also maybe internationally as well, what are the biggest lessons that you've learned that have really shaped your approach when doing a super prime development?
I think a few things, and you almost touch upon it exactly, and what luxury is. Luxury is buying time, and that's a thing you cannot buy. You cannot get anywhere else. So be it a fixer who saves you time, or be it a property that saves you time, or be it something in your life that saves you time, that's really what high net worths want back now. You see it through people trying to elongate their lives. You see it through medical treatments that people are doing to get hours and days and hours back on their life. That is what people are buying as luxury now. In terms of properties we've done, I think, I think the number's about 4.2 billion of London we've been responsible for in terms of luxury property, which is, quite a sum. In terms of how people have transformed into how they're buying nowadays, people want an experience. They don't want to buy an off-the-shelf property the same as they buy an off-the-shelf suit or a off-the-shelf piece of art. They want that experience, be it with the artist, be it with the interior designer, be it with the developer. So some of the properties that I'm most proud of and most happy to be is where I've had an experience with the buyer to create something bespoke for them. We talk about global buyers. Some of the properties, I usually see properties like this take years and years in the development, and they start off as numbers on plans and floor plans, and apartment 6, apartment 1, and they transform as the journey goes into Mr. Fine's house or Mr. Briggs' house, or they transform. And one of my favourite things is going into properties which for me were flat 1 on a plot and have transformed into someone's home, and to see how they live in it. That is the experience that I think is fantastic, and that's what buyers are more and more desiring at the moment, a real experience to create a bespoke product with a developer.
And as a developer, that must bring you so much joy to be able to deliver that for a client.
It is one of my favourite things is going into apartments that we've sold previously and seeing how people now live in them. It's taking our white box, so to speak, that we've given them, and just a plot number in our heads, and seeing it transform into their home is fantastic.
And Rianne, coming to you, as we sort of talk about that client experience, we're finding that some aspects are not, it's a given now. It's a prerequisite. So wellness, sustainability. It might be sort of the authenticity of the place for your private client. But from a design features point of view, how are you balancing their personal style with sort of protecting things like resale value? Because the market is tough, and that must be something that you have to consider at that same time, or maybe your clients are considering too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with any project, the very first stage that we spend a lot of time on is the brief. So we will spend time with our client, we will get to know them, we will really kind of delve into the requirements they want for their sort of new home, their new property. More and more, the top tier requirements that we're finding is, certainly since the pandemic, a wellness area, a really good sort of space for either meditation or yoga, an exercise space. We're seeing more kind of steam rooms, saunas, plunge pools, all that sort of thing. Again, as I said before, really great sort of tech for a property is really key. That sort of inside outside space as well is something more and more that we need sort of clients are asking for, and sustainability. And so those four things, we will always advise a client that those are the areas that they could invest in, and that will add value if it comes sort of to resale later on sort of down the line. And then in between that, then we will work with them to inject their own personality more with the kind of soft furnishings. So the furniture, the accessories, the art, that's where they can sort of put their own personality into it. But that being said, you know, a high net worth client is wanting that bespoke experience. So we do make sure that with any project that we work on, as much as we're sort of thinking about that commercial value, that they will walk into that property and it is bespoke to them and it is beautifully curated for them, with those sort of main areas that's where they perhaps have put their investment in.
Definitely, and as we said before, it's people's homes that we're dealing with. And Sai, sort of coming to you along the same trend, how is sort of wellness and lifestyle reshaping your clients' decisions when they're making the choice on where they're going to live or sort of how they're going to live?
I mean, I think we all touched on this, and what the wellness element has grown dramatically since COVID, right? And as Chris said, people are now focusing on longevity in every way, shape, or form possible. And even that is, I want to say, paddle is a great opportunity for which is fastest growing sport in the world at the moment. And I co-founded a property paddle group, which which was just started by an accident as a fun thing to do for people just to get together and talk about. And that's kind of grown into, started with 3 people on the group chat, now it's 170, and we play weekly games. And that just shows that everybody wants to spare a little bit of time for wellness, whether it's, and it's a fun way of doing it. Recent studies show, cold plunging is a great way to de-stress. I hate it, but my personal best is 8 seconds. But my wife does 4 minutes. So it's what fits well with your well-being, your mental health. Meditation has been there, but creating those spaces within properties has become quite important, right? New build apartment blocks now offer the wellness center, which is not just a treadmill and a couple of weights. It's becoming more and more mainstream, and access to good gyms in the neighborhood. Or our clients in the country are building. They've requested space to build paddle courts. The tennis court is always kind of part of it. What else in terms of access to creating those spaces? Gym brands have gone up in sales dramatically, because people are now building a full-scale gym. If a situation like COVID happens again, they have access to everything at their home. So the country homes are having full-scale gyms, villas. I have clients who have villas in Greece who've created incredible spaces for purely focusing on the wellness element. So that is definitely going to be more and more mainstream. I think it's like a $4 trillion industry. Running clubs, paddle clubs, tennis. It's always been there, but accessibility to all of these things. It's like a community. Everybody wants to be a part of a community, whether that's yoga or running or paddle. So that's how I see it becoming more and more mainstream, and access to more wellness centers across town is going to be keep growing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's also that personal element of it is so important, because like you said, you could do 8 seconds in a plunge pool, whereas your wife can do 4 minutes, but somebody might really enjoy paddle, but somebody might not enjoy something else. So it's making sure that it's personal to that.
There's
to
so
that
much,
client
yeah,
as
so
much
much
as possible.
offering right now. So it's people can pick and choose what feels good.
Yeah, definitely. And Demetrius, we've touched on sustainability a little bit today. Um, are you seeing buyers asking for more sustainability from an art point of view? And what demand is there for sort of shaping the art world from a sustainability point of view?
Exactly. I think it has changed quite a lot, as not as dramatically perhaps as the property market, just because the way that the art is being produced is not incredibly costly for the planet, so to speak. But there has been a manner of, so to speak, of the amount of traveling that collectors may be doing, the way that different ways of the shipping, how we wrap works, how we actually sort of the overall market as such. So people are looking for experiencing art, and experiencing art is not just simply purchasing a piece of art. It's actually belonging to a community. Say, for instance, we run cultural programs for different members clubs where we actually allow people to understand culture, explore culture, and so on. So for that, we will not have an international program. We'll try to limit that to we actually staying in London, for instance, or to another European city, and minimize the sort of the sustainability cost that might be associated with traveling too much and so on. So I think it's just what we're trying to do. They want to feel as a community that we know what we can do collectively to reduce this when it comes to art. However, there are components where people are actually asking now for works that are being produced sustainably, especially for works that are bespoke, that are actually made for installations for a home or a particular corporate environment. And it's becoming a lot more important. We actually see a great rise into it. But collectively, we actually see that being not just an effort of an individual, but more for the communities and the clubs that we actually run when it comes to exploring culture. Let's explore, let's enjoy, let's connect, but not to a cost that we'll actually be all feeling guilty about in terms of the sustainable cost that we might have.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like the thread of community coming through this entire discussion. And Rian, coming to you, how do you balance luxury for sort of I guess sort of the younger generation as well, because I think whilst we spoke about it actually before we sat down today, that sometimes it's difficult for it's often not the client putting that sort of request on you. It's often the advisor putting that sort of spark in the client's brain. So from your point of view, what is that younger generation demanding? Is it sort of from a transparency point of view without compromising on that quality?
I mean, certainly the younger generation is asking for more sustainable solutions, and we're seeing that with our clients and our designers as well. Our younger designers are really passionate about sustainability, which is really lovely to see. And we're passionate about that as a studio. So one of our kind of founding directors is really passionate about sustainability. So we became the first UK-based interior design studio with a B Corp. So for us, it's about that brief stage and sort of understanding with clients and asking them that question, how important is sustainability to you? And more, they're saying it is important. We want to kind of integrate it into our design. And then it becomes about education, really. So for us now, more and more, we're putting in more sustainable materials. We're thinking about where we're getting our products from. And it is also about encouraging clients to invest in pieces. So when we're doing our interiors for them, we would maybe sort of select a few items that we think these are really key designs, really key items that have a lot of longevity. So, they're worth investing in terms of some of the beautiful pieces that we can kind of introduce them to. And it's also about making our designs adaptable. So, for example, at the moment, we're working in a penthouse in London, really big kind of open living space. So we're doing this like 5-meter kind of long S-shaped sofa with a front and a back. And whilst it's going to be great for that space, it might not be great when they move to their next house. So how can we adapt that furniture? How, at the moment, we're looking at making it into 2 or 3 sofas. And so eventually when they move, they can take these pieces with them. And more we're designing with longevity in mind. So curating spaces that look great now, but will also be something that they can take with them in the future, which is great. And that's something that we're, all of a sudden design becomes more meaningful, I think, as well, when we're sort of, bucking against that sort of fast fashion, basically, which is good.
No, definitely, and it's definitely a part of sort of that education piece for the client to sort of, you know, and making them think what happens when you move to your next place, and sort of having that conversation, which is, I guess, so much to do with that personal relationship that you have with the client. But I guess, Chris, for you, development must be quite different because you're not dealing with that ultra high net worth straight away. It's you're sort of you know, doing it bricks and mortar, and it's something slightly different. So what do you see from a ESG and sustainability point of view? How is that shaping the super prime market from a development perspective, but also from that performance perspective as well?
There's a few bits at play here. The general direction of travel is set by the government, and they introduce regulations on us as developers to build to certain standards, build to certain ESG levels. So they set the direction of travel. I think residential lacks behind commercial at the moment, massively. Residential buildings, they're only so far you can go with ESG. We're sat in a lovely grade 2 listed building. Unfortunately, it's not the most eco-friendly of buildings out there. There are only so many things you can do. The facade's listed. It's only so good in terms of thermal efficiency. Commercial buildings, obviously, if you're starting from ground up, we're building a building in London Bridge at the moment, which is the first in terms of net zero in terms of build and operation. So we're able to do that in commercial buildings, and I think a lot of commercial occupiers now demand that on the buildings that they work in because it reflects their brand as a company. We're a B Corp brand. We want to be in a building that reflects that itself. We're only starting to see that come through in the residential market now, in the same way that, some people eat meat, some people don't. Some buyers really care about ESG and really care about sustainability in their buildings, and some unfortunately don't. So we're starting to see a little bit of flow into that, but we haven't yet got to a point where perhaps someone may pay more for a property because it meets certain ESG standards. However, we are seeing in the commercial markets, people would pay more for an office floor because it meets certain ESG standards. And there are debt funds out there who will lend to you at a lower rate if you meet certain ESG standards. So I think residential has a bit of a way to catch up with the rest of the other markets in terms of doing its bit for the environment going forward.
And do you think it would be the driving force of the government going forward for the development sector rather than it coming from a client point of view?
I think so. I think the government set the general direction of travel on ESG as they are doing in the commercial markets. There's been very strict regulations around MEES. 2027, you can't let something that's ESG, EPC-C or lower. 2030, you can't let it if it's EPC-B or lower. So they're setting very strict standards in terms of commercial markets. They're not doing that yet in terms of the residential markets. You only see some buyers who are really, really caring and cautious about what they're doing to the environment, what they're doing in terms of the apartments they live in, how they travel, how they work. We're only starting to see that flow through. But some of my most favourite apartments are ones that have bits and bobs of collections that they've carried through in terms of certain houses, and they're reusing, they're repurposing. I think that's some of the favourite ones I've done.
Yeah, definitely. And coming back to you, Demetrius, we feel that we're sort of going full circle. That have you seen a demand in art evolve in sort of private residences to sort of the boutique sort of commercial projects as well? And is it more about investment, or is it about sort of living with art as part of your legacy?
It's a bit of both. To be honest with you, it really is a bit of both. I think what we've actually seen prior to sort of, COVID, and where the financial market was actually slightly healthier, people sort of will acquire art as a form of an investment, as diversifying their assets and everything. And, there's nothing against that. But I think you have reached a point where we've lost sight as to what art is. And of course, it can add to your life, but I think the way it has been traded has been rather problematic. So I think we're moving from the investment component in a way that redefining investment to a cultural investment, to your legacy, to an investment above and beyond the financial means of how that can work and be translated to something above and beyond that. So I think we've seen works and collectors, serious collectors, and individuals who are actually new to the market, actually caring about first the connection with the work, what they will actually leave behind, as a legacy, as you mentioned, to their kids, to their family members, above and beyond the financial means. Of course, they need to make wise decisions in case that they want to sort of, again, review that. In the art, you never own art. You're a guardian of an art piece. And that piece is actually being passed on to another party. So as a guardian, you need to look after it, but you also need to make sure that it's of a certain value for someone else to care for it at a later stage. So we're never owners. But for that level of ownership, people actually want to have that connection, to have that connectivity. So we're no longer passively, consume, and I think across the board here, the best quality works, but we want that experience to be a part of it, a part of, meeting the artist or understanding what the process is, understanding and exploring that journey. And that cannot always be translated in a financial, in a financial sense. So I think we're moving from an investment to another form of investment, cultural heritage and a personal connection that goes above and beyond the sort of the stock market values that perhaps may exist in other sectors.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just it's so interesting to talk about sort of legacy and how that changes from sort of what we thought investment was. And Chris, sort of coming back to you, what do you think for the super prime development industry? What are the main opportunities and what are the main challenges for the upcoming year, especially considering the shift in buyer priorities?
The biggest challenge for developers at the moment is finding the end buyer. The competition is so fierce across the globe. We're now competing with the other tax havens around the world, the Dubais, the Milans, the Lisbons, the Greases. So, you spoke about the exit of high net worths. That is a real problem for the high-end super prime market. So that exit challenge, so to speak, is probably our biggest challenge as developers. Going forward, there aren't a lot of sites in central London. We have a fixed land pool here. There are probably maybe 3 super prime sites left in central London of great scale. So it's not a huge amount going forward. We have some challenges with the government in terms of planning, in terms of Building Safety Act. So challenges for us as developers to get things built. So it is a rocky path ahead. I think for us as developers, what we need to keep doing is keep providing a fantastic product. And I think that will, in an increasingly competitive market, you can still have the cream at the top, and it's our job to provide that cream and attract those buyers to the best products, the best flats, the best apartments.
Yeah, definitely. And for you, sort of what do you see as the opportunities, maybe not just in strict residential, but as a luxury developer, which could mean a lot of other things? What are those opportunities? It
does, and CIT have been around for 30 years. We've probably only been a luxury prime developer for the last 15. We've been across all sorts of sectors. At one point we owned shopping centres and hotels. We're developing a hotel next door to this building we're in right now. We're developing a members club in Belgravia. So I think our skills in providing luxury experiences to buyers extend more away from apartments. So we'll be looking at other sectors in the same luxury space, but other chances to provide experiences to high net worths and high buyers.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of that actually very, very nicely brings me on to sort of my final question, because luxury does have a different meaning to different people, and especially sort of in the world that we live in now, it's probably a little bit overused. So for you, what does luxury mean now, as in one sentence, and what does it mean to today's buyer? So so maybe Dimitri, it's coming to you.
Okay, I think it was mentioned earlier by Chris. I think luxury is buying time, but buying time in a quality sense, whether it be exploring culture, whether it be enjoying an incredible space. It's just being present in that time and in that space in a meaningful manner. So, and I think that's what these individuals who can actually engage with that market looking for. It's I think the most precious thing that no one can actually buy or trade for.
Definitely. And Rhian, what about you?
I would say luxury is creating innovative, adaptable, conscious design, not just for the present, but also for the future.
Fantastic. And Sai, what about you?
Well, I mean, I agree with both of them. For me, I think London needs to change. they need to less taxes. But like Chris said, developers, interior designers, everyone in the industry are doing incredible things. So luxury for me would be to bring back that old market, that what London was famous for. So in a way, going back in time and bringing it back. So yeah.
And Chris?
Yeah, luxury, 5 years ago, luxury, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, luxury was probably about gold taps and expensive things and glitter, so to speak. I think that's completely transformed with a younger generation. Luxury is about experience. Luxury is about something that money can't buy. It's about that experience with your interior designer or your art curator. It's about meeting the artist and creating something bespoke for your apartment. That's what luxury is about. It's about experience.
Yeah.
Having that view out your window, right? That's something that money can buy, but it's so scarce.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess luxury is about choice and being able to have that personal perspective of your home or the space that you experience, and being able to make it as authentic to you as possible, which I think everyone sort of touched on today. I want to thank all the panelists today, because what came through so clearly, that luxury is not just about space anymore. It's about meaning, it's about identity, it's about well-being, it's about trust, and it's about how we help our clients live well and invest wisely, all the time staying true to their values and true to their authentic selves. I want to say a huge thank you to our panelists for all of their insights, and everyone who is here joining us from the Accouter team. I hope everyone leaves today feeling that they have fresh ideas on how the industry is curating homes that don't just impress their clients, but also express who their clients actually are. So thank you very much.